This is the Planeteers Podcast. Stories of women who are doing the work, restoring what's broken, protecting what still holds, and showing us that change is still possible. I'm Beth Bannerman. Each week, I talk with scientists, leaders, and doers, women who are shaping the future with courage, creativity, and grit. The damage is real, so is their courage to heal it. Welcome to the Planeteers Podcast. Today we are joined by someone whose work reminds us that storytelling isn't just about what we see, it's about what we feel and what we choose to protect. She is a woman whose lens has helped shape a global conversation about beauty, urgency, and our shared future on this planet. Cristina Mittermeier is one of the world's most influential conservation photographers and storytellers, a marine biologist by training, a winner of many prestigious awards, including National Geographic Adventurer of the Year, Smithsonian Conservation Photographer of the Year, and the Sylvia Earle Medal. She is the founder of the International League of Conservation Photographers and the co-founder of the nonprofit SeaLegacy with her husband, also an award-winning conservation photographer, Paul Nicklen. Cristina is a collaborator with Rolex's Perpetual Planet Initiative, Sony Artisan, and was recently featured in Photographer, a film directed by Oscar Award winners and now available on Disney+. She has worked with over 200 NGOs to help pass historic protections for marine wildlife and continues to support Indigenous-led movements against unsustainable development projects like industrial fishing and oil drilling through her powerful portraiture. She is also the author of a new book called Hope, which captures the beauty and fragility of our world's biodiversity and the wisdom of those who honor and respect its ancient balance. Through her lens, Cristina captures not only the beauty of our planet's wildest places, but the profound connections between people, nature, and survival. Her images move hearts. Her activism moves action. She spent her life traveling to the front lines of conservation, from rainforests to coral reefs to the ice edges of the Arctic, building a visual legacy that calls us to imagine and to fight for a thriving future. Today, we'll explore Cristina's amazing journey, the moments of hope and heartbreak, and resilience behind the camera, and what it means to live a life of purpose in service to something bigger than ourselves. Cristina, welcome to the Planeteers Podcast. It's truly an honor to have you with us today.
Beth, what an introduction. Thank you so much. And it's an honor. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Your work, Cristina, does not just document the natural world. It dignifies it. It shows us what we stand to lose and that we still have time to protect what still remains. We live in this majestic world, as you say in the film Photographers. Like, look at the world we live in with the whales. Look at the birds. Look at what we have. You've inspired millions, including me, obviously. But before we get into all of this, can I ask you where you're calling from today? What's interesting that's happening off camera? Are you growing anything new in your greenhouse? What's happening?
Oh, it's so exciting. I'm home. I'm in British Columbia, beautiful Vancouver Island. And, we have this extended rainy season during the winter. And just the last week, it's been sunny every day. No jackets needed anymore. Spring is here and it's beautiful. It feels amazing. So very busy with my garden. It's a planting season. It's a seed sprouting season. So we're planting peas and cucumbers and zucchinis. And I have a rainforest of peppers of all different kinds because I'm Mexican, so peppers.
That's great. So let's go back to your childhood in the mountains of central Mexico, one of 5 kids with a mom who earned her PhD in psychology. Your dad was an accountant who brought home books for the kids. And you were drawn more to the Cousteau adventures, Jacques Cousteau, I was a big fan, Jacques Cousteau adventures than the girly books or the girly reads. So do you remember what those stories sparked in you?
I sure do, because I still have all those books. So my dad, he was a good man and he would go work 9 to 5 in his accounting firm. But in the first floor of that building, there was a bookstore. So he would come home at lunchtime, like so many Mexican families do, they travel home for lunch and then they go back to work. And he would bring these packets of books wrapped in newspaper and pass them around to the children after lunch. And my brother always got the most awesome books. He's the only boy, of course, he's the oldest. And the girls, we would get the coloring Barbie books, which I thought were so uninteresting. So yeah, I would make deals with my brother. I would wait for him to leave his bedroom, and then I would sneak in and read these books. And a lot of them were about adventure. Just I remember particularly pirate stories in Borneo and Malaysia, and just these rich, vivid descriptions of the natural world, the sharks, the crocodiles, the tigers. And I think that was the first spark. We live in such a beautiful planet.
Yeah, and I think just your natural curiosity. It was intense as a young girl, wasn't it?
It was, but I think every child that's born on this planet is born with that innate curiosity. We all love dinosaurs and animals and nature when we're little, and it is our teachers and our parents that have the power to either encourage it or squash it. And I was lucky that my mom was one of those people that is naturally curious about the natural world, so she encouraged it and she championed.
Let's talk about, so your mom, she encouraged you to follow the path, that your heart was leading, and kind of held some of the relatives at bay who maybe thought you should have had different expectations for a traditional girl at that time. And you went into university and you studied the closest thing to environmental studies that you could, which was bioengineering. Is that right? In marine studies?
It was a negotiation with my dad, of course. And yes, there was a lot of pressure because I think not just in Mexico, in many parts of the world, girls are expected to go to university so that they can catch a good husband. And I didn't want to do that. So in the beginning, my parents wouldn't want me to move away from our small town. It didn't look good. It was not, safe, whatever. So I studied communications for a year. And then after 1 year, I was so bored. So I negotiated with them and I pleaded and I cried and I researched. And my dad compromised with me. He would let me go to his alma mater, his university, if I could find something there. And so engineering and biochemical engineering. And it was so hard, Beth. Just like not something that came naturally to me, the math, the physics, the chemistry. But I really wanted to go, so that's where I went.
And so you get this degree, and the experience of studying this topic that was kind of not coming natural to you, kind of convinced you that that was not the path, right? And so,
yeah,
you then serendipitously get introduced to this experience at a hotel. And so tell me the story about the hotel and the baby turtles and the lights.
Yes, it's a good story because what I studied was biochemical engineering in fisheries and aquaculture. So how do we exploit the ocean? In my youthful imagination, I thought I was going to be swimming with dolphins, but I didn't see a single dolphin. Instead, we were learning the fishing arts of the industrial complex that provides food for so many people. But it is a brutal industry. And it happens at sea where nobody can see it. And I went as a young student, as an observer on a trolling boat. And what they're trolling for is shrimp. So they drag these heavy chains across the bottom of the ocean and they just destroy the bottom. Anything that grows there is gone. And they kill everything that happened to be there. So for every 1 pound of shrimp, 10 other pounds of other creatures die. And when I say it to you like that, it's kind of dry, it's hard to imagine, but seeing it in person is different. And when that net dropped on the deck of that boat and they started just literally sweeping dead creatures over over the edge, I thought this is so wrong and so myopic and so wasteful. So I didn't want to be part of that. So I couldn't find a job when I graduated. I didn't want to work for the fishing industry. And I had a friend, and her uncle or somebody owned this hotel on the Riviera Maya in the Yucatan in Mexico. So I went to work, no pay, just in exchange for room and board. And that's when I started, I was supposed to be doing a biodiversity study, just looking at what animals were there. So I was diving every day and running around barefoot. I had a bicycle. I was so happy. And I started walking on the beach at night because I realized that sea turtles were nesting there. And I'd never seen a sea turtle alive, and I seen them dead on these nets. And so I started walking and learning more about these animals and realized that a lot of the nests were being dug out by raccoons and other animals. And I started moving the nests. I didn't know what I was doing. I just literally researched, asked questions. And pretty soon I had all the kids in the village wanting to come with me. And then the hotel where I lived realized that it was fun. And so they asked me to take the guests. And this just spiraled into a bigger and bigger thing. I was looking at a box of old letters and memories that my mom sent me. And there's the papers for the beginning of an institution called the Centro de Ecología de Acumal. This is the tiny seed that started with these sea turtle walks, and now it's a whole ecological institute dedicated to sea turtle research. And it's just amazing. One person that cares can plant that seed, and it doesn't have to be big.
When I heard about this story, I was struck also because I thought that story to me was emblematic of it, kind of the bigger impact that you would go on to have throughout your life. And so, not to be too punny about it, but it really was the beginning of your SeaLegacy. Like that story to me was like, and that is just so inspiring that it's just, we can all just take one small step. We don't know where it will lead us, or what impact we will have. Was that the moment where you discovered maybe, or you started to understand what your own superpower was? You talk a little bit about people declaring their superpower and doing more. Do you think this is, here you are, you're in the field, you're educating, you're bringing, you're connecting? Was that it then?
I was too young, and I mentor a lot of young people, and I talk to them. This is me at 20, 21 years old. And I had, the avenues that were opening up for me. When I was living in that hotel in the Yucatan, film crew came by, and they were like, "Oh, you're so pretty, you should be a model. You want to model for us?" And I did one day of modeling for them. And you can see how easily you can be distracted into pursuing a different line of work. And I remember thinking, no, this is not for me. So these other paths, I love nature and I would like to do something to protect it. It was not very clear. You've heard about this idea of planting a tree that you will never, ever sit under the shade of. And that was that for me. I was looking for a way to make a living. I wanted to get my father off my back, because I was hearing all the time, when are you going to make a living? You need a bank account, blah, blah, blah. And during that time, because I think that when you do what you love, the door will open. If you open your heart and have the courage to walk through the unknown, it'll happen. So a team of scientists came through and stayed in the hotel, and they were researching the recovery of hurricanes, and they were looking for a very specific butterfly that's an indicator of the return of the ecosystem. And I knew where this butterfly lived. And so because I had been running around barefoot riding my bike, so I took him, and they were impressed. And they gave me a job for a new organization called Conservation International, which today is one of the largest conservation organizations in the world. And so I moved back to Mexico City, and I got my first check. I still have it. I made a photocopy because it was the first time I was being paid for what I wanted to do.
Wow. That's great. Amazing. And you joined as a scientist, and you then began to write scientific papers, but it wasn't until you met a photographer who was creating a photography book that you began to understand, in communicating about the world and conservation, the visual imagery can be so much more powerful than the data or a table of data or a chart. So tell me a little bit about how you went from the role in as a scientist into, full-blown conservation photography.
Yes, and here we need to clarify, especially for the Gen Z and
okay.
My first couple of years in the job were like hardly a scientist. I was like a technical junior, pushing paper, filing stuff, paying attention, learning for sure, making connections. But the science came later. But we were in Mexico City, and we shared office space with a photographer. And this photographer, I would walk by his door, and he had his boxes of slides, and he was preparing these beautiful books. And he didn't speak very good English, so he asked me to help with translation and writing captions for his photos. He had a big passion for conservation, and so these books were about conservation. And I thought, this is something I can do, so I helped them. And when the book came out, they launched it at the Mexican Embassy in Washington, D.C., and I was invited. It was such a revelation, to go to an event. You have all these people dressed beautifully and these books are on tables. And I could see that people were browsing through the book, but they were not reading the text. They were looking at the pictures and they were asking questions about the photography, about the experience of being a photographer. And I thought, well, that is, I felt like it was like a way of lowering the price of entry into a very elite conversation, conversation. Yeah, the science can be so overwhelmingly difficult to understand. And a lot of people feel intimidated by these scientific papers. But the photos are easy, they're just such a good entry point for people to feel like they're invited to participate. So that was the first inkling. It took a long time. It's not like I became a photographer right then and there. I carried cameras for other people, I carried bags, and I paid attention. And for years, I helped publish other people's work before my own work was published. None of these journeys are linear, and they're never easy. They're never immediate. And young people need to learn to be patient.
Right. When you were watching people react to these photographs in this photography book, so for me, looking at your photos, for example, and you are just so, some of the split photographs that you do of the animals under the water and the people above is just stunning. It's technically incredible, mind-blowing, but there's such a story behind it. And so I can imagine myself at one of those parties, at one of those galas, and genuinely bringing myself right back to my 7-year-old child of wonder and saying, tell me this, how did you get that? Tell me about that story. Who is that guy in the boat? Those types of, what kind of shark is that? And so that reaction, was that an aha moment for you to see people react?
I think it was one of the biggest eureka moments for me. It's like, wow, people feel comfortable asking about these things, and all of a sudden you're not the highbrow scientist. You're somebody that they can imagine themselves in your place. And for me, photography has always been like that. If I can make you feel for a moment that you could be there, what would you feel? And I think people love that. And that over under technique I learned from one of the masters of photography at National Geographic, David Dubélé, who's done more than 80 stories for the magazine, and he is the master of that over-under technique. And I remember having that reaction, like, how did he get the guy to scan? How did he get the fish to be there? So I have worked really hard at that technique because it scratches the itch of curiosity. You see the surface of the water, but what's underneath? What's happening below?
Yeah. But from me, just learning about you, just philosophically, it's just so poignant. It's so poetic. It's so perfectly you in terms of bringing us closer to this world that is invisible, as you said earlier, to most of us. So we have the privilege of seeing what you see. So thank you for that. And that you do have experiences that most people don't have, witnessing profound beauty, but also profound heartbreak, as you described earlier. And I was wondering, is there one story that comes to mind that really tested you? It would be interesting, I think, for our audience who are going through all sorts of tests and challenges in life to maybe learn from, your experience.
Yeah, I was influenced always by the work of others, and I still find great inspiration in what people before me and now are doing. And Susan Sontag, the writer, is somebody that really inspired me because she wrote so much about the importance of photography in the front lines of war in the 1960s and 70s. And she said in her books that were it not for those photographs, people in the United States and Europe would not know just the horrors of what it is. And I had that eureka moment thinking, there is a war on our planet's biodiversity happening right now. And the photographer can play a role in bringing those stories from the front lines. But there's also a danger in just focusing on the negative and the hardship, because people will turn away from that. If it's too much, people just don't have the emotional levy to deal with so much heartbreak. So you have to find the ebb and flow of the narrative. And I took great inspiration from Dr. Martin Luther King, because the challenge of the civil rights movement, of course, so much violence and heartbreak and injustice. But he didn't start the speech by saying, I have a nightmare. He told us what the dream was, and he pointed us in the direction that we should aspire to go. And I wanted my photography to do that, to remind us that nature is the foundation of life on Earth. And it's all there and it's beautiful. And that's what we should aspire to have a planet where nature thrives, because that's the way that we thrive. But you're right, you have to remind people and punctuate that beautiful narrative with the reality and the horror of what's really happening. I saw a video this morning when I was having my coffee and scrolling my Instagram of a manta ray that has been run over by a boat, by a propeller. And so his beautiful wings are shredded and it's trying to swim. And I was thinking, I would like that photograph for myself. And would I have the courage to take it? What kind of emotional steel do I need to grow in order to be able to do that? And I've had many of those photos where things that you're looking at are so horrific. And yet you have to bring back a beautiful photograph of something that is just heartbreaking. And there's been a few.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be emotional, you standing there in front of something in real life, because it's emotional for us witnessing a print. Can't imagine, the kind of just the being there in real life and having the reality and it's quiet. It's not, there's no narrator in life as you're out there with your camera saying, go look over here or don't look there. It's kind of like, it just is. And then, you have to make the decision in the moment. I remember my experience with a manta ray. It was, we were out just off of Maui, and this gigantic ray just came out of nowhere. I had, I'm looking for anything. I'm just a beginner snorkeler, and I'm out there looking for any colorful fish, but also thinking that I could be eaten alive at any moment, which was a continuous fear. But then this gigantic, beautiful, graceful manta ray comes up, and it had the front, the name, what are they called, mandrills or something, like
mantle, yeah.
Bigger than my body, coming up to me. And I just froze. I just thought, this is I felt like I was in a wonderland. I couldn't believe just how beautiful it was. And so to see something so beautiful like that, killed, I think would be just, I don't know, just so emotional.
It's the roller coaster of emotions, right? First, you're a little frightful because something so big had just swam up to you, and you have to kind of do a mental calculation. No, it eats plankton. It means no harm. It's not here to eat me. And then you can relax and just be in awe that this thing even lives in the same planet that we do. And if it stays and you can actually watch it be a wild creature, I think it changes you. Yeah. And I've had that opportunity so many times. But then I have to go into my mindset of, I'm here to take some pictures. And right. I have to be thinking about, all of the technical things about diving or being in the ocean, plus, F8, and, I need strobes and half power. And, I'm sinking, the current is taking me. It's a lot to keep track of. And when you encounter an animal in distress in the ocean, your instinct is to help. And your profession says, no, you're here to tell the story. And I think a lot of war photographers go through that conflict, that tension.
Yeah, that's actually true. So I started off in journalism, and I too was drawn to those types of stories where there needed to be a decision to be made in the moment about, what do you do? So difficult transformations, positive transformations, impermanence is a part of life. It's a part of nature. Like all of us, you have experienced your own deep personal and professional transformations, marriage, motherhood, establishing your photography career, establishing the International League of Conservation Photographers, establishing SeaLegacy, and in your social media feed, also sustaining a physical injury from a biking accident that kind of sidelined you for a while. We all go through unexpected changes, both good and bad, and reflecting on those moments throughout your life, how do you think in totality those life experiences have shaped you and your perspective on your legacy and what really matters in life?
Yeah, the humanity of it all, right? I mean, the looking back at your life, I'm going to be 59 this year. I can see 60 in the horizon. And you look back at 6 decades and you think, I've been so lucky to be a human on this planet and to have all those experiences, that falling in love and then being heartbroken and having children and watching them grow and being, all of those things. And then, your own frailty as a human, how easy it is to get injured or get sick, especially as you get older. And it humbles you, I think, and it centers you, and it just makes you appreciate the preciousness of life on this planet every day. And of course, we're very lucky because I don't have physical needs like those of so many of the people that I photographed, but it makes me grateful, and it makes me even more determined to try to help, because I get to go back home to where it's nice and comfortable, and a lot of the people I photographed live in very perilous conditions. So how do we help?
That's really powerful. And in those moments when you're feeling really tested or tried, do you find solace or inspiration sitting quietly in nature, either underwater or out? Not that you'd be sitting underwater, but, how do you find your Zen is what I'm asking, Cristina.
I am married to somebody who really needs to sit in nature, and we do something called rebreather diving, which is a specialized machine that's used by the military. It was invented by the military so that you can dive without having any bubbles. And it's a complicated machine that requires, a canister of oxygen and, scrubbing CO2. It's complicated, but the bottom line is that it's quiet diving. It's silent. You don't have that happening, and you can sit in silence in the ocean and be there for a long, long time. It allows you to have very long dives and deeper dives. And it is very Zen. It's amazing, but that's not where my Zen comes from. I need to be proactive. I have this incredible need to take action. And if something is being unjust or whatever it is, I need to do something about it. And that's how I find solace, and that's how I feel good.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for doing so much good. So you and Paul, your husband, your Zen husband, you have seen how images can create more impact than being, not that they can't have impact, they do have impact on the glossy covers of prestigious magazines. But you both decided that you wanted to evolve your work into SeaLegacy, the communications and marketing agency for the ocean, by the way. So was that your intention, or in your own words, could you maybe describe that?
Absolutely not. For any photographer, there's a series of milestones that you achieve that tell you that you're on the right track in your photography. And one of the biggest ones is to be an assignment photographer for a magazine like National Geographic. That's when an editor will call you in, will give you a story, and will give you a budget, and will send you out for months to bring back the story. And we both were there. We had achieved that status. We had a job with the most prestigious magazine in the world. But because we were out there photographing in the front lines of the devastation, we were there in 2017 when we had the Pacific Ocean get so warm, just like it is now, that there were thousands of marine mammals just dying from poisoning from an algae that blooms when the water's too hot. And I remember both of us just kind of like heartbroken, thinking we have to be able to do more than just publish in the magazine. And it was Paul's idea that we start a nonprofit organization. So we started SeaLegacy in 2000, I think it's 2010. It's going on 15 years now. And I think it's done a lot of good, but the most important thing it's inspired a new generation of storytellers to take their cameras underwater and to become activists for the ocean. So as we near, our retirement age, because it's not wise to keep diving so complex, when you get older, I take a lot of comfort knowing that there's a whole new generation of incredibly talented artists. I'm in the middle of promoting the creation of a marine protected area in Mexico, and we called for Mexican photographers to submit their best work of this, and they answered the call. And I was looking at the submissions yesterday, and they're breathtaking. It just gives me so much joy. So,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. And the work continues. And when I look back at some of the most iconic images from starving polar bears to the impactful work that you've done to create whale-safe net bans off of the coast of California and LA. And now you're talking about a new campaign. And these campaigns are shaping global policy. We know that, local and global. How do you think about, what's maybe the campaign that you're most proud of? Or do you think about things like, I'm most proud of the thing I'm working on right now because I have to just keep going? Is it something like that?
I had a revelation a few years ago, and that's an excellent question, Beth. Because there was a time when I thought, I have to do it all. I have to set up the campaign. I have to go and meet with the people. I have to do the science. And no, I realized that there's a massive community out there of other activists with other expertise, from lawyers to illustrators, you name it. And when I understood my place in the puzzle, in the wheel, I'm just a cog, then it was like a great relief, because I play a number of roles. Yes, the photographs are important and they're an entry point for a lot of people. But the photographer as an ambassador, as a spokesperson for this thing that we want to protect, is even more powerful. And in that role, I get invited to keynote and to speak to really important audiences. I was in France last month at the invitation of President Macron for a meeting called SOS Oceans. And, my heart was a little hurt because I was not invited into the policy and the science discussions, but that was not the role I was there to play. I was there to be the photographer, the convener, to set the note for the mood for the meeting, and to give everybody a North Star for what we're trying to achieve with this meeting. And I played my role, and it was incredibly successful. And so once I understood that, then it just takes all the pressure off. I just lean on the incredible community of colleagues and peers that I have around the world, and they do their part and I do mine.
Yeah. And the part that you play, the strategic influence that you have, even in the rooms, even if you're not physically in it, is profound, Christina. And so that's a wonderful example of accepting and also celebrating what you are able to do. And I think that's one of the things that maybe holds some people back, is feeling like, I can't do all of it, and so I won't start. And it's actually, no, that's probably not the most helpful way of looking at things.
Even this podcast gives me the opportunity to talk about these things. And so you too are a cog in the wheel, and we all have to play our role and do really good work to make sure that our part is fulfilled.
So you've worked with some incredible filmmakers and storytellers, from Oscar winners like Robert Redford, Elizabeth Chai, Vashari, Jimmy Chin, and Will Smith. And you also have a number of incredible storytellers as SeaLegacy ambassadors. And so what do you admire of the best storytellers and how they move people?
I think the thing that I admire the most is that a lot of those people don't have to care about our planet or nature, but that they choose to use their platform, their voice, their ability as a storyteller to shine a light on these things that matter. Because you take somebody like, I admire enormously Hilary Swank or Naomi Watts, and they could just be empty shell celebrities, but they're not. They really care about these things. And the fact that they're willing to lend their voice, Jennifer Garner is such a supporter and such a champion, and they're so human. Jason Momoa, there's so many, Leo DiCaprio, in front and behind the camera, people like El Chivo Lubezki, who is a Mexican cinematographer. He has 5 Oscars for his work in films like The Revenant and Birdcage and Birdman. He could choose just to go and make money, but he really wants to lend his skills to our cause. And to me, that's the biggest thing, because there's so many celebrities out there that could do more and they choose not to. And so they just thank you for those that do.
Yeah. What great artists, too, that you've mentioned. And that really connects us and our heart. I was thinking about the movie My Octopus Teacher, So for our listeners, that was it won the Oscar Award in 21 for Best Documentary. And for those who haven't seen it, it's deeply personal. It's a visually stunning story about a filmmaker who had a year-long relationship with a wild octopus in South African kelp forest. And the octopus, by the way, had no lines in the movie. But I was wondering, like, have you had a connection that really, without, for some reason, I really connected with this relationship with wildlife. Have you had that kind of a connection with an animal or even people that you've connected with in some of the places that you've gone?
I think one of the things that's magical about my octopus teacher, and I'm very good friends with Craig Foster, who's the character and the filmmaker, but I'm even better friends with his wife, Swati Foster, who I just did a podcast with. And they have a new beautiful documentary on Netflix about pangolin, and it's worth watching.
Oh, I've seen that. That's amazing.
Craig is a magical storyteller. I've known these people for 25 years. And the magic of my octopus teacher is that we all crave that unique relationship with an animal. I think we want to connect with nature at a deeper level. And I cannot claim that I've had that. I've spent quite a bit of time with playful sea lions and dolphins and whatever. They all move on. They all have their own busy lives and they're doing their thing. And even octopus, I just crave, pay attention to me. So I spend a lot of time waiting by their little hole wherever they're hiding for them to come out and be interested. And most of the time they're not. Animals are very busy.
Doing their thing, as Kulu does in the pangolin film. Oh my gosh, I love that film. Can you tell me maybe about your experience with whales and in particular the right whales? So I sometimes, as I'm writing or as I'm working, and this might sound really weird, is I put on a whale soundtracks because I just love the echoey. What was it like to be under what? Is that, I don't care if it's weird. It's weird.
Beth, you're weird. That is so cool. I'm always in awe that I get to be in the presence of these animals. And I've spent quite a bit of time with sperm whales. And when I first got in the water with sperm whales, I was really scared. This is the largest predator that's ever lived on our planet. These are whales with teeth. And they are incredible hunters. They can dive, several kilometers into the deepest, darkest depths of the ocean and hunt in the dark. And then they come up to the surface and they have dangling the tentacles of these giant squid that they found down there. But when you encounter them, especially the pods of females that are matriarchal, they're so gentle and they're so curious. And I've had incredible experiences where whales have, when they have their babies, the babies have issues with their buoyancy. They cannot dive that deep. So they have to leave the baby on the surface while most of the pod feeds in the depths. And they usually leave the baby with a babysitter. It doesn't have to be mom. It could be an auntie or somebody else in the pod. And these babies are very rambunctious and they're bored. So if you have, I think, the right approach, the right energy, the right respect, this baby will come up to you. And we have hilarious sequences of these baby sperm whale. Her name is Little Mermaid Ariel. And just comes up to Paul and starts gumming him because she has no teeth. She's a baby, but she's still huge. And Paul is like, get in here, and I'm like, absolutely not. I have a lot of respect for whales. They're very big animals, and it's a trending thing, people wanting to get in the water with whales. And we've had situations with humpbacks when they're hunting and when they're traveling, they're very busy and they're not paying attention to humans. And getting trampled by a whale can be deadly. And it's a lot of responsibility to put on the whale to know where the swimmer is, and to avoid you. So accidents are just a matter of time before they happen. So I've had that happen with sperm whales. We had the opportunity, we got a permit to get in the water with southern right whales. And these whales, they're the most nomadic, the most rugged, the wildest of all the whales. They're the fourth largest whale, and they travel between Antarctica, cross the Drake Passage to places like New Zealand and the Southern Bight in Australia and South Africa to have their babies. But, this was a whale. It's called a right whale because it was the right whale to kill during the whaling years. It has a lot of fat. And so we decimated those population. We took it from 50,000 whales to less than 300 whales. They were literally on the verge of extinction. And when the whaling stopped, and we finally had an international ban, the numbers started recovering. And so today there's about 3,000 of these whales, and they're incredibly protected. So we got the special permit to go and get in the water. And if you think about the southern belly of Australia, this is subantarctic. The water's very cold, and there's a lot of great white sharks in this water. It's like kelpie, but the water is so clear. It's crystal clear blue and white sandy beach. I mean, if you didn't know, you would think that you're in the Caribbean. But it's challenging because these whales are there with their babies and they're very protective, but they're also very curious. So get in the water with this whale, and I've never had this happen to me before, where a whale just makes a U-turn and comes straight at you to investigate you. And they don't have hands. They have these bumps on their head, these callosities. And when you see this whale coming straight at you, you understand what it is. It's here to ram you because it wants to understand what you are. So it's one of the most terrifying months of work that I've had, because we were bumped by these whales. Paul, my husband, was taken on the snout of a whale for a ride. She wanted to kind of roll him under. And I got a whale swipe its fluke at me and almost decapitate me. If I had been in the right position, I would have died that day. And you can't blame the whale. She's just telling you that you're in its space. But I worry about all these people that want to get in the water with whales and they don't know what they're doing, because it can be so dangerous.
That was some important work that you did in the Southern Australian. It was the Bight area. Is that right? And so you were trying to convene, I guess, scientists and the Australian government together to create a protected. Is that work still ongoing?
It's still ongoing. And this work of what I call the soft diplomacy of photography. Yes, it was amazing, because while we were there, the National Park System in Australia, they were working on expanding protections for these whales. The Marine Conservation Institute of Australia is the organization that does most of this work. And what they needed was public commentary on whether or not to expand, because the competing industry is, of course, the oil industry, and they're doing seismic exploration in the very same waters where these whales are trying to raise their babies. And so thankfully, we were able to work and bring our social media and get people to comment and share. And they were able to expand the protections, but not enough. The oil exploration is still going, and the Australian government can be so obtuse. Now they're cutting down the habitat of koalas, and they're killing koalas. Like, really? So they really need a lot of public pressure, and that's where the photography helps.
And you similarly in the Bahamas. I remember, the story of you kind of keeping your distance, but taking a picture of the kind of the oil drilling that was going on, and that was, I think, as I understood it, it was in response to government there trying to boost the economy after a series of hurricanes, right? So you've got to balance the ecological systems with the economic systems, and they're at war, right?
Yeah, there's a human tendency to want economic results now. And yeah, the Bahamas had gone through Dorian, the horrific hurricane that decimated it, but also COVID, where no tourism happened. And they were looking for a way to just bring some revenue. So oil exploration. And what we were trying to say is don't cash it all in with oil exploration, because you might ruin it all. Because at the same time, scientists had just discovered the largest seagrass meadow in the world, right there, south of Nassau. And there was a lot of interest. And I think it was just published yesterday or today that finally they're able to emit carbon credits from this seagrass meadow and generate so much more revenue just from protecting this, which also, of course, it guarantees that there's going to be a conch fishery, which is important for Bahamians, that the sharks are protected, the manatees are protected, tourism can thrive. So it's a win-win-win. And all we were trying to do is buy time.
That's the thing. That's the thing. We have answers. We can fix this. It's just a matter of, and I hate this cliche, I'm going to say it anyway. It's just think chess, not checkers. Like, just think it through. You know, we can do this. We're so much more advanced than we were 100 years. We know more. There's still, we don't know, but gosh, that's a great story.
And we can take knowledge from Indigenous people who, when making these important life-changing decisions, sit down and think about the next 7 generations, not just the next 7 months.
Right.
And I really think it changes your perspective.
Your new book, Hope, it's called Hope, deeply poetic, beautiful, part photography, part manifesto, part love letter. What inspired you to write it now? I read that you were feeling blue, and this work helped remind you that you are not alone. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so this opportunity came to me in November of last year, 2 years ago. So right when we were starting to hear that President Donald Trump was going to run again for office, and knowing what the havoc that he wreaked for the environment on his first presidency, I was just like, this can't be happening again, and feeling really overwhelmed. Here in Canada, we were feeling the same, with a conservative government versus the liberals, and this hunger to drill all the oil. And I was feeling depressed. I was thinking, where's the hope? And so at that time, I was approached by this amazing publishing house in Paris. And they basically offered me to do any book I wanted, any paper I wanted, any photos I wanted. And usually when you negotiate with these publishing houses, they're always looking at the bottom line. And they're always trying to cut corners and cut costs. But they said to me, if you can get your followers to support by pre-purchasing the book, we eliminate the financial risk and you can do whatever you want. And so that's what I did. I called on the most amazing group of people that follows me on social media, and they came. And we were not only able to raise enough money to publish a book together, because the names of everybody who backed that book are in the book, but we were able to create international distribution and build a community of hope and resilience together, just to remind ourselves that there's still time. We live on a beautiful planet, and there's solutions. Like you said, we know what we need to do, and it's not too late. And we need to find the resilience and the community and the kindness and the compassion to do it. And
I love it's what an intelligent strategy to launch a book that you really want to launch. And we were chatting before we started recording, and I just wanted to let the listeners know that the book is available on Cristina Mittermeier's website, and also you can find her through SeaLegacy.org. There is also, follow her on social media. You'll be among millions, and you won't be disappointed because the content is stunning. And at the start of the book, there is a dedication that you wrote, and it's poetic. It's frameable. I mean, I've printed it out here. I thought, we should read it. But no, I won't. But my goodness, it's beautiful. Can you tell me a little bit about your poetry?
I was so touched by the thousands of people that came to be part of this Hope community and that pre-purchased the book. I wanted it to be a collaborative process, so I was asking on my social media for people to help me pick the photos. And I thought, I should write a thank you note to these people that came and became part of this. And that was that poem. And it came to me in 10 minutes. Just, I think when you're an artist, you always have these artistic things that happen to you. It came very quickly. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I really derived so much strength and purpose from knowing that they were there, and it gave me hope. So it served its purpose.
It's absolutely beautiful. I will read just the beginning. This book is dedicated to you, the supporter of hope, to the legions of hearts and hands, the unwavering thousands who stand. I'm going to cry. I can't read it. Everyone needs to read this. It is so beautiful. It is so beautiful and heartfelt.
We're all worried. We all want to do more. We all want to be part of this. And it's an invitation and a note of gratitude, really.
Yeah. Okay. So you've said that SeaLegacy needs to outgrow you and Paul. and that your role now is to lift others and to amplify new storytellers. How's it going? How's the shift feel?
It's I've witnessed and I've observed so many photographers who have fulfilled amazing careers, and then they have not known when it's time to step aside and maybe pivot in your career or do something else. I don't want to be that photographer. I don't want to be the crazy lady diving when I'm 90, holding a camera. So we're very lucky and very blessed that we have such a massive community of people supporting SeaLegacy, and we have the most amazing donors. And the people who support financially are committed to us until the end of 2027, which is kind of like when I thought would be a good deadline for Paul and I to step aside. So we're fully funded and we are in full expedition mode to complete the work in Australia. That work that we did in Australia was the first step on trying to inspire and encourage, imagine that we can create a swimway between Australia, Timor-Leste, and Indonesia, a safe passage for whales and other creatures to migrate. And these three countries have, joining borders, so they can create a peace park that, defines their maritime borders. So we're there to try to inspire, but also trying to tackle the challenges. Indonesia has a huge problem with trash in the ocean. They don't have the infrastructure to collect trash or recycle. So all the trash goes in the water. And we were diving with diapers and plastic bags like I've never seen before, Beth. But they're trying to solve it. So we're there to try to support, and instead of criticize, come up with solutions. Yeah. So I was talking to a friend of mine who works for an organization that deals with ocean plastic yesterday. And I said to him, my dream is to have these beautiful clamshell box for hope, but I don't want to do something that adds to the trash problem. And he's like, no, we can do everything with recycled materials and with ocean plastic to create this beautiful gift box for hope. So I was like, oh, so excited. So plastic from ocean in Indonesia can end up in beautiful things. It's alternative materials. There's so much research. There really is a lot of hope.
That is so cool. That is so cool. It's so nice to have someone who cares so deeply go through every single detail to ensure that, what you're saying is, obviously you walk the talk, but this is just, that's really great to know. So you've worked on protections from French Polynesia and the coral reef gardeners. That's a great story. To Panama and the site, the landmark legislation to protect sharks around the world. What gives you hope that the tide can still turn?
I think the thing that gives me the most hope is that a lot of humans care. And people that are in position of power, the Minister of the Environment, all of these bureaucratic bodies are made up of humans who have families, who care. And when you get an opportunity to work with them and to empower them, you can create magic. And so at the moment, I'm working with an extraordinary woman, the Minister of the Environment for Mexico, Dr. Alicia Bárcenas, and she's amazing. And it will be in her power to declare this large biosphere reserve in the Gulf of California, Dos Mares, which I am so proud that I came up with a name for that reserve because it's the Gulf of California and the Pacific. And to use my photography and my influence to help galvanize the artisanal fishing community in that part of Mexico to support a reserve that will work well for them while keeping the industrial fishing fleet, the same fishing fleet that I was studying when I was in university, to keep it away from the coast and to stop the industrial slaughter of marine wildlife in places like the Gulf of California, which is so special. So I get to work with people like that. And I never come up with these ideas, Beth. I'm always called in by the minister, by the president, by whoever is trying to imagine how do we bring public support and awareness. And I go and play my role. I lend my photography to it.
The need is so great. And the more that people are aware of the work that you and Paul are leading with SeaLegacy, the more you will be called in. And this intellectual property that you carry with you, this wisdom that you carry with you from here to there, can spark so much imagination and so much creativity in coming up with new solutions that it's your value that you bring into any room is just profound. And we're so lucky that you continue to do it and inspire others to kind of pick up a microphone or a paintbrush or a pen or, a gavel or whatever it may be to do their part, to play their role. So we are coming to a close. But I want to ask you just a couple of quick questions. One is, if you could go back and speak to your younger self, that girl reading books and imagining the ocean, what would you say to her?
I think I would have become an artist a lot sooner. Believe in that part of yourself that wants to make art. Because to your earlier point, the artist exists to ignite the revolution. Whatever the revolution is, we need artists to help ignite the movement. And that's all I'm doing. So there's so many forms of art that can propel us in the world's injustices and all the challenges that we face as a humanity. So pick up whatever artistic endeavor. It can be writing, making podcasts, writing poetry. I think it all helps. So I would have just encouraged myself to not doubt that and to pick up all my artistic creativity a lot younger, to believe in myself a little younger.
Well, you made up for lost time. You wrote that dedication in 10 minutes. I read the book by Rick Rubin, and one of the points that he makes is that our job as artists is just to get out of the way and just kind of let ourselves be the filter to whatever's coming through. And it seems like that's what you did.
Isn't that the truth? I oftentimes feel like I'm these membrane, these, skin that allows a conversation to happen between the people that are looking at my art and the people or the animals that I'm photographing. And I'm just a conduit. So get out of the way and let that conversation happen.
It's exactly it. That's your split picture. You're the membrane in between. It's amazing. For listeners who feel inspired but overwhelmed, you've encouraged people in past podcasts, past writings and talks that you've given that they just need to find something to do, find what's easy to them, something that they love, call it their superhero suit and just go out and start. What would you say to somebody who is waiting for permission to be anointed a superhero suit?
That's such a good question, Beth, because I think a lot of people are waiting, to be invited into helping in some way. And you don't need an invitation. Just like Beth said, pick something you are passionate about. It could be picking up trash in your neighborhood or talking to your neighbors. I think people underestimate the power of our voices and our influence in our little centers of community. And just talk about the things you're passionate about. For me, it's the welfare of wild animals. I'm not so interested in domestic animals because there's a lot of people that are caring about that. But I use my voice to try to advocate for the injustice that I see happening in the natural world. And everybody can do the same. You don't have to be an expert to care. Mm-hmm. And so in the morning, I put up my superhero suit and I show up here at my desk to do the best I can with all the tools at my disposal. You can do the same.
Wonderful. And lastly, I've heard you say this before, but you ask people to close their eyes and imagine a beautiful planet. And I was wondering, can you tell us what you're imagining today and what is your beautiful dream?
Oh, that's a beautiful question and a wonderful way to end this podcast. There are places in our planet, Beth, that are still untouched. And I have had the immense luck of spending a lot of time in these places. When you get in the water, or when you go for a walk on a trail that has not been touched by the industrial arm of man, it's like stepping back in time, where all the pieces that are supposed to be there are still there. And it just touches you in such a profound way that nature, the array of ecosystems and species that travels with us on our spaceship is so perfect. It's been attuned over billions of years to provide life for us and for everything else on planet Earth. All you have to do is protect it. And being able to imagine what that looks like allows us to be deliberate in our journey there. What do we need to do to get back to that? And it's certainly not what's happening in politics today around the world. But I also know that the political pendulum swings, from these extreme right desire to exploit the last resources of planet Earth as soon as possible it will swing back in the other direction where people like us will have an opportunity to rebuild the institutions that have been dismantled, to rehire the brilliant minds that have been fired, to reimagine the policies that we need for the 21st century and beyond. And we will get our chance, so I hope you're all ready.
We will get our chance. Get ready if you're not. Well said. Cristina Mitty Mittermeier, what an honor to spend time with you today. Thank you so much. Your life reminds us all that storytelling is not just a tool, but a compass. It points us to where we can go. And if we close our eyes and we imagine a beautiful planet, use that in your everyday decisions, whether you pick up that plastic bottle that you're going to drink your water from or you're not, whether you're going to pick up that piece of trash in your neighborhood, or whether you're going to pull up a chair at a policy discussion and speak from your heart about what you know is true. So thank you so very much, Christina. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Look who's the poet now. Thank you, Beth. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Planeteers Podcast. If it meant something to you, send it to someone who'd care, or leave a review to help others find us. You can find us on Insta, LinkedIn, and BlueSky, or at planeteerspodcast.com. Join us next time with more women creating a cooler world.